For with all diligence, in other words, I love that that little phrase is in there because it means something. With all diligence means what I'm saying right now is of super utmost importance. With all diligence. In other words, this is top priority in your life. Guard your heart. In this case, the word heart and soul are synonymous with each other, okay? In many cases in the Bible, they're synonymous. Guard your heart, guard your soul with all diligence, because out of it come all the issues of life. In other words, your heart affects, your soul affects every single part of your life. And that is so true as we're finding out. And if our soul is damaged, it will end up influencing every part of our life. Jesus said a little leaven leavens the whole lump. Okay, a little yeast will eventually work itself through the entire lump of dough. Well, so will damage to the soul. It will affect every single part of our life, okay? Here's a warning that we're given in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15 says this, look diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and then what does it say after that? And thereby many others become defiled. Okay, so notice it says diligent, there's that word diligently. Look diligently, examine yourself diligently. See if there be any roots of bitterness or hurts that are on the inside of you. Because if there are, these roots will spring up and they will trouble you. Now, in other words, here's what that means. It will spring up. In other words, maybe it hasn't already shown itself yet. Maybe the right situation in life hasn't occurred where that bitterness will rise up and manifest itself. But if it's on the inside of you, it will come out of you. Okay, it's there. So he says, examine yourself, check yourself, search diligently. Is there any root of bitterness in there? And you know what? One of the questions we might ask afterwards is sometimes all you have to do is look at your family. You want to know what's on the inside of you? Look at mom and dad. Because chances are really good what was on the inside of them got poured on the inside of you. And we may not, want to admit that, but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. There's a reason why that the world has sayings like that. But then it goes on to say this, not only will it trouble you, it will end up defiling many others around you. Bitterness, hurts, they don't just affect you. They affect those that are around you or those that are closest to you. So this is another warning, okay? So it says, looking diligently, search your heart. Now you know why David said, Lord, see if there be any defiled way, tainted way, wicked way within me. Why? Because I don't want it to mess up my life, number one, but number two, maybe even more importantly, I don't want it to mess up the lives of those that are all around me. Because it will. You may not intend to, but it happens. Sometimes it goes on for generations. It happens, okay? And then the third verse I want to open up with, Philippians 1, 9 and 10. This is a great verse that talks about having boundaries to protect ourselves. And you notice all these things have one thing in common, that we don't get bitter on the inside of us. But it says this. It says, and this is the Apostle Paul's prayer, okay? And this I pray, that your love may abound more and more. Now, just so you know, in context, this word love here means your giving heart. You opening your heart to someone or something, okay? So it says, and this I pray that your love, your giving open heart, may abound more and more in knowledge and judgment. Those words, knowledge and judgment, mean in common sense and the ability to make good, sound decisions. How many of us know we get ourselves in a lot of trouble because we make bad decisions? Bad decisions all the time. And so he says, listen, when it comes to your giving heart, your loving heart, don't be so quick to just act upon it. Don't open up your heart to everything or anybody that comes your way. Be careful with your heart. In other words, your heart's tender. Your heart is precious. Don't be so quick to give it. But he gives instructions to protect our heart. Let's go on, next verse. He says, so use common sense and good decision making so that you may only approve things that are excellent, or they are healthy for you, or they're good for you, or they're good, or they're worthy of you giving your time for. How many of us know that the Bible, not the Bible, the world uses a phrase, don't throw good money after bad money. Don't do it. In other words, I had a gentleman come to me one time years ago from the church. He said, Pastor, I need your advice. He said, my brother-in-law asked me to give him $10,000 because he was loaned him $10,000, and he laughed when he said the word loan. In other words, he knew I'd never see it again. He said because he was behind on his mortgage, he was going to lose his house. He goes, what do you think I should do? So obviously he was hesitant, which is why he was coming to me in the first place. I said, I got one question for you. If you give him this $10,000, is it going to change his entire life and change his whole situation? Or B, in 2 months from now, he's going to be back in the exact same situation. He said 2 months from now, he's going to be in the exact same situation. I said, then why would you throw good money after bad money? I personally wouldn't give that money in that situation. Now again, if it was going to change his life, absolutely, give him the $10,000. It's worth investing in. But don't throw good money after bad money. In other words, use common sense. Is it a good thing for you to give your heart to? Is it a good thing for you to give your finances to? It's a good thing for you to give your time to. Use common sense and good decision making so you only approve or contribute your heart to things that are healthy, things that are excellent. Why? That you may remain sincere and without offense or pure unto the day of Jesus Christ. In other words, guard your hearts with good, sound, common sense decisions. Do that. I told a story in the church before. Many, many years ago, I was somehow, my parents had some people from the old church over at their house, and we were talking, and they said, oh, we met some stranger on the street. He was homeless, and we helped him. I said, oh, that's good. That's nice of you. I said, how'd you help him? Well, he's living at our house. I said, excuse me? I go, well, the fact that you're at my house, where are they? Or where's this guy? He goes, oh, he's back at our house. I go, you don't know who this guy is. And they got all offended. Well, we're showing the love of Christ. A week later, they came home, the whole house was cleaned out. The guy robbed them blind. And you know who they were mad at? God. God, why did this happen? We were just showing your love. You didn't use common sense. You didn't use it. You didn't have good, safe boundaries. Okay, there's a reason why, for example, police officers will tell you, don't go on the street and give money to people that are begging on the street. Why? Because there's a 99% chance they're just going to go run and buy drugs or alcohol with that money. If they say for food, go give them a sandwich instead. I've actually been there where we've given this guy a sandwich. He took, because he said, I want food. We got him a sandwich. He took it and he threw it in the garbage. Because he didn't want food. He wanted liquid food, if you know what I'm saying. So the word makes it clear over and over again, guard your heart, examine yourself, and use good common sense or put boundaries around you to protect your hearts. So that's what this whole teaching is going to be about, protecting your heart. So we're going to get into, quickly, boundaries and limitations. If you're just tuning in, the title of this teaching is Setting Boundaries and Accepting God-Given and life-given limitations, because those become boundaries for our lives. You'll understand what I mean in just a second. All right? Proverbs 22:28 says this, quite simply, remove not or don't remove the ancient landmarks. Why? Because those are boundaries, and those boundaries keep order. In other words, back in the day, one person's property was butted up against somebody else's property, and what determined the boundary was, well, from the end of the river to that big tree over there to that big rock over there. That's how we know where your lot's on this side and this lot's on the other side. Well, if somebody wants to go in and rip that tree down and move that rock, guess what? Chaos ensues. Because how do we know where the boundary is? How do we know which land belongs to yours and which land belongs to mine? You know, there's an old saying that fences make good neighbors. Why? Because there's no disputes. We all know what is mine and we all know what is yours. I'm responsible for cutting the grass up to here. I'm responsible for trimming these hedges. You're responsible over here. And those boundaries keep us accountable. And you know what they do? They stop us from meddling into our neighbor's business. Isn't that one reason why we get into such fights with other people? We butt into other people's business. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say it that way. Other people butt into our business. Because we never butt into somebody else's business, right? But they butt into our business. Why? Because there's no boundaries. So boundaries make good neighbors. Boundaries allow you to know what is yours and what is not yours. So we all need boundaries in our lives. That's why the Bible says, don't take down those ancient landmarks. Don't take down those boundaries, because they maintain order. How many of us know the Bible says, let everything be done decently and with order? Okay? Now, the first point of boundaries we want to really go over. Setting boundaries with toxic people. How many of us have discovered some people are toxic? How many of us have discovered that there are people that we know that have the biggest smiles on their face and they carry the biggest knife in their back pocket? And while they're smiling, they will stab you in the back. They will stab you in your heart. But they'll be smiling the whole time that they're doing it, okay? You can't trust certain people. And you're a fool if you do. I've told many people over the years, why did you go back again? You're a fool. And you wonder why you got hurt? You wonder why you're disappointed? You know, who was the prophet that said, oops, I did it again, right? Why? Why would you make the same mistake all over again? There are some people that are toxic in our lives. It says this, unto the pure, all things are pure. Every time I read that verse, I think of either Cheryl or I think of Lisa Sylvester. No, not you, Mike. You're close to that. Not quite there yet, Mike. Where man, nobody's ever done a bad thing in their lives over there, okay? But unto them that are defiled or they're unbelieving, guess what? Nothing is pure, for their mind and their conscience is defiled. In other words, there are people who see everything in a twisted way. They see everything with an evil undertone to it. Or they see everything through the eyes of, what can I get out of it? How could I win? Or how could I take advantage of this situation? There are defiled people out there. In fact, my wife and I had a conversation, it was last week or the week before, as we discuss this class all the time, and she goes like this, she goes, I didn't realize there were so many messed up people out there. And she's been in the ministry for as long as I have, probably 35 years right now. I go, oh yeah, hon, there are. There's a lot of messed up people out there. So there are toxic people out there. Now, sometimes toxic people could be your own family members. Sometimes toxic people could be friends that you've had since childhood. And what do? Because we have good hearts, we feel obligated to give them a seat at our table. Never feel that obligation. Now, I use this analogy all the time. We all know like a target looks like, or a bullseye, you know, has the different rings and circles that are around it. That's how we should put people in our lives. We should have a big bullseye where there's a center and then concentric circles around and around and around. And we need to place people that we know in different rings in that target. The fewest amount of people should be in the center, the bullseye. And the most should be on the outer edges. Because those that we have in that bullseye, those are the ones that we allow closest to us, and those are the ones that have the greatest influence over our lives or over our day. Because we're closest to them. And what I tell people all the time, we should, by the way, reevaluate that picture every year. Because you know what? Some people are going to be moved inwards, and some people are going to be moved outwards. And some people are going to be taken completely off the board and just thrown away in the trash can. Because they do you no good. They always hurt you. They always disappoint you. They always use you. They always manipulate you. They always let you down. I mean, always. So why do you have them so close to your heart if they're that toxic in your life? You have to set up boundaries. Now, the further out on that circle that they go, the less influence you allow them over your life. Did you hear what I said? Not the less influence they have over your life, the less influence you allow them. Because we need to set up boundaries so that it is us who decides the amount of influence that somebody else has. Because how many of us know people who they think they can determine how much influence they have over your life or over your family or over your marriage or over your children? No. You don't make that determination. I make that determination. And if somebody thinks they can make that determination, they need to slide further and further out from that influence in your life. So we need to learn, and again, sometimes it's painful, sometimes it's difficult because, oh, they're my sister, they're my sister-in-law, they're my best friend. I don't care who they are. If they're toxic for you, If they're unhealthy for you, move them out. I know people whose marriages were destroyed because they allowed close friends or siblings to be too close to their heart, too close to their marriage. And they would just say negative things and cause problems and cause trouble all the time, thinking they were just, oh, well, they're just trying to be my friend. No, they're not. They're bitter people who don't like the fact that you're married and happier than them, and they just do this to you, and they try to ruin your life. So we need to determine the toxicity that certain people have, and we need to move them in and out of our circle of influence in our lives. Amen? Very important, but that's up to you to control. Now, there are some of us, we just don't have the strength or the courage to say no. You need to find it. Okay? You have to. You can't let people push you over and take advantage of you over and over and over again. You can't. Okay? You can't be the prey all the time where people want to devour you. Okay, the second point. All right? Setting healthy, godly boundaries and limitations in your life to establish divine order. Whew. That was a long sentence, but I needed every word in there. We need to set healthy, godly boundaries and limitations in our lives in order to help us establish divine order. Again, God says do everything decently and in order. Our priorities in life, they're boundaries. Our priorities in life, they're limitations. And what's on the top of that list, we give more time to than those things that are near the bottom of that list. What's on the top of that list, we invest more money in that than in the bottom of the list. We all need to have our lives in order. One reason why so many people are messed up, because their lives are in total disorder. Their finances are in complete disorder, which I'll talk about in a few moments. Their priorities with their marriage, their priorities with their job, their priorities with their hobbies are in complete disorder. For example, I grew up in the day where video games were just coming into a fad, okay? When I was young, Pong was invented. Bing, beep, 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 bing, beep, 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 beep. Like that was the biggest thing in the world. Well, nowadays, you got kids who've been playing video games their whole lives, and now they're married and they're 25 years old. They still act like they're 13 years old. Oh, yeah, I only play 3 hours of games a night. You do? What is wrong with you? Paul said, when I was a child, I acted like a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. Now, if that's your hobby, I got no problem with that. But if you're putting that ahead of your wife, if you're putting that ahead of your responsibilities around the house, if you're putting that ahead of your time with your children, if you're putting that ahead of your job, if you're putting that ahead of church, your priorities are all wrong. So it's important to get our lives in order, to set proper boundaries so that we can know how to focus our energies. For example, on this wall right over here, we spent weeks going over our vision for the church. Why? So we're all focused on what our vision is, what our purpose is, so we're not confused. Our purpose is to have a passion for saving souls, have a passion for transforming lives, have a passion for strengthening families, and have a passion for building our church community. This is our vision. This is what we're here for. This is what we're good at. This is what we're called to do, and we need to pursue it passionately with all that's on the inside of us. This way we're all running the same race. We're all on the same page, right? But if you got people running off all different directions, then you have disorder. You have chaos, okay? So get your life in order, because order is a type of boundary or limit in your life. Okay, next one. Our time is a God-given limitation or boundary for our lives. Time. In other words, we do not have unlimited time. Right? We just don't. So therefore, it's a limit. It's a boundary that we have. And we need to learn to accept that boundary and learn how to work within that boundary. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people fail miserably on how to manage their time because they don't understand it as a necessary boundary. It's one. How many of us know you can't fight time? You can't. So therefore, you need to work accordingly to within the time restrictions or the time constraints we have. And let me put it this way. Even God gave himself a limit when it came to time. It was called the Sabbath, right? And on the seventh day, what did God do? He rested. So even God needed a limit or a boundary for his time. Do you know how many people reject that type of limit in their lives? No, I'm too busy doing this. No, I'm too busy doing that. No, I got to do this. No, I don't have time for that. Wait, did you think that God was just randomly making up the principle of the Sabbath? You think God was like, hey, I want to play golf on Sunday, so you know what? I'm going to invent the Sabbath and then make everybody else do it. No, the Sabbath serves a purpose. It serves a purpose for all of creation. It serves a purpose for your life. It serves a purpose for your physical health, your body, your mental health. You know, one reason why so many people are stressed out and are filled with anxiety, they have no rest. There's no Sabbath in their lives. They're just going and running like, you know, chickens with their head cut off until their body finally breaks down. How many of us know, most people don't realize this, how many of us know the story of Daniel in the Old Testament? Okay, so they were taken captive by the Babylonians, all right? Who can tell me how long they were held captive for? 70 years. Why 70 years? Why not 69 years? Why not 75 years? Why not 80? Why 70 years? I'm going to tell you why. Because they violated the law of the Sabbath. Because not only does man need a Sabbath, the ground needs a Sabbath. You cannot plant the same crops in the same plot of land year after year after year. 6 years you can. On the seventh year, you need to give it a break, part of the law of God. And you know what the Jewish people did? They ignored that Sabbath for the land for 490 years. So God said, oh, you violated my law of rest and Sabbath? Guess what? I'm going to give my land the 70 Sabbaths, years of Sabbath, that you denied them. That's why they were in bondage for 70 years. Because they violated the law of Sabbath when it came to the land. Why? Because they didn't think it was important enough. Or you know what? Well, why would I possibly let that land go with no plants in it? Because I can make more money on it. That's right, because money's more important than rest. Says who? Says us. But not God. God knows what he's talking about. God knows what he's doing. By the way, how many of us ever heard of the Great Dust Bowl? Got nothing to do with football games, okay? In the Midwest, years ago, a horrible event took place. It was called the Dust Bowl, where a horrible windstorm came across from the west across to the east, and it destroyed, I don't know, tens of thousands of acres of farmland, and it kicked up dust into the air, and it blew it as far over as Chicago and then New York City. New York City was covered with 3 inches of dust. 3 inches after like 2,000 miles. And you know what caused that dust bowl? Why that happened? Because the people did not properly farm the land. They over-farmed it so that the land lost all its nutrients and it just became dust. And when the wind blew, it blew all the dust and it destroyed all the land. People starved and people left the Midwest for decades. That's why the big expansion out in California, all because they didn't practice the law of rest for the land. Okay? Excuse me? Yeah, the grapes of wrath. Exactly right. Very good. So time is a God-given limitation and boundary for our life. You only have X amount of hours in a day, and X amount of those hours need to go to rest. Then we have to allot it for our family, our children, our work, and so forth. So use that time and respect and receive that limit for your life. You can't fight these limits, okay? The next, boundary/limitations. Our abilities, or lack thereof, are a God-given limitation/boundary for our life. What do I mean by this? We all can't do everything. Thank God. I'm going to give you a personal example because we might ask you this later. I would love to have the ability to be an awesome, great singer. I mean, Jeff Dio was here. I would love to be able to sing like Jeff Dio. I would. But you know what? God didn't give me that ability. And you know what? It's probably a good thing he didn't. You know why? Because my callings are to preach the Word of God, to counsel with people, and disciple people, and to run this church. If I was that talented and gifted to sing, you know what? I probably wouldn't be spending as much time preaching the word, counseling people, and building programs in the church, because I'd be too busy running around singing at different places. So it turns out my lack of ability ended up being a perfect limitation for me that I needed so I could properly fulfill the true giftings and callings that are in my life. Bernadette knows what I'm talking about over there. So we don't have all. Now, I'll give you an example. The Bible says, and to some Jesus gave 1 talent, another 2 talents, another 5 talents. Some had more abilities than others. That's okay, because maybe God gave the 1 talent, just that 1 talent, so he could use it and focus 100% of his energies on that. And use that and be the best in the world at that, while the person with 5 has to go around. Well, I got to spend some time over there, I got to spend some time over there. You know, who knows? But for whatever reason, God limited your abilities. And don't look at that as a negative. That's a God-given limitation or boundary that God put in your life. For example, some of us, God did not give the talent or the ability to make a lot of money. He didn't. And you know what? That could very well be the best thing that ever happened to you. Because you might not be serving God if he did give you that ability to make all that money. Because, you know, love of money is the root of all evil, right? Or you may be so occupied with money that you wouldn't be involved in the ministry you're doing right now to change people's lives. Who knows? God knows. So, lack of abilities, lack of talents, or believe it or not, they're a God-given limitation to our life. Perhaps we never looked at it that way before. But I'm actually grateful that I can't sing like I really want to sing. I'm grateful. I'm grateful I don't have millions of dollars, because maybe I retire early and go to Florida or something like that. But now I've got to stick in work till I'm older. No, amen. Love this job, love the people. Our temperament is a God-given experience, a God-given and experience-given limitation / boundary for our life. In other words, our temperament probably comes to us from 2 different areas. Number 1, from God, but number 2, life experiences help mold and shape our temperament. Okay? And our temperament ends up being limitations or boundaries for our lives. What do I mean by that? Not everybody has the temperament to be a pastor of a church. They don't. They may think they do, they don't. Take my word for it. And there have been countless people who have, oh, I love God, so therefore I'm called to be a pastor, but they did not have the right temperament. And they end up hurting and abusing and destroying a lot of sheep. They ended up, because they don't have the right temperament, they got frustrated and they got disappointed, they got angry, their marriage began to suffer, and they end up having affairs and destroying their family and destroying the church. Why? Because they didn't understand the limit of temperament. There are some people, you are gifted, you are great to help others. And you should do that with all of your ability. But there's a good chance that you'd be terrible at being in charge of that group. Because you don't have the temperament that it takes to call somebody to the carpet on something when they need to be rebuked or disciplined. You don't have the temperament to have the creativity to come up with good ideas or to lead meetings. No, you're really good at helping, but that doesn't mean you have the temperament to lead. 2 completely different temperaments that you need to have. And some people don't understand that. So your temperament is going to limit you to certain things. When you take on a position or a job that does not fit your temperament, you're going to be a miserable person. You're going to drive everybody at your house miserable when you get home. And you're probably going to make everybody around you at work miserable. Because you've taken a job that does not fit your temperament. Do you understand what I mean when I say that? So that's very, very important. All right? I'm racing through over here. Age and health are a God-given / life-given limitation / boundary for our life. Age and health. Some people would love to be marathon runners. I was looking for something else. But some people just don't have that God-given health to do it. I'll give you an example. I know people like Pastor Jojo, for example. Many of us know Pastor Jojo. Pastor Jojo could lift heavy weights forever. Okay? That's just the way he was born, to be able to do so. Me, I've lifted weights, and I learned real fast. I was not called to lift weights. Okay? Just was not called to do so. I wanted to run, and I ran, but guess what? My knee would tell me after about 2.5 miles, you're done. You're not made to run more than 2.5 miles. I now get winded driving 26.2 miles, which is a marathon distance, okay? So I had to learn that my health and my natural physical abilities limit me from doing certain things. I'm sorry, I know we grew up at an age where we tell our kids, you could be anything you want. No, you can't. Sorry, you can't. If you're going to be 5'2", chances are you're not going to be a professional basketball player. Not going to happen. If you don't have a certain IQ, chances are you're not going to be running a major corporation. Sorry, that doesn't mean you're not gifted in other areas, but you have certain limitations that will prevent you from excelling in other areas. That's okay, there's nothing wrong with that, but we need to understand that that's a limit, that's a boundary for us. Don't even go there. But I can do all things through Christ. Stop it, that's not what that means. It means I can endure any situation I find myself in. And also, I've reached the age to where I need to start believing my age. See, you don't know what I'm talking about if you're younger than me, because other people see you as getting older. I don't see myself as getting older at all. But the aches and pains in my back and my neck, they tell me I'm getting older, okay? So I need to learn, like I still want to pick up every heavy box around here and carry it to the back and carry it over here. I want to pick up every table, move every chair. Why? I've been doing it for 25 years. Why stop now? But I got to start understanding my age is telling me you probably should find somebody else to do that for you. Our finances are a life-given, choice-given limitation/boundary for our lives. Okay? Now I say life-given because some people are born into more wealth and finances than others, but I also say choice-given because, if you're going to school and getting a degree in gender studies, chances are you're not going to be very financially secure as you get older. Okay? Because you probably made one of the stupidest decisions of your life by doing that. All right? So our finances, they're boundaries for us, man. We can't do everything that we want to do, that we'd like to do necessarily, because our finances limit us. And lastly, I'm running. Last one. Check this one out. This is going to be big. Other people's limitations are boundaries for our lives. I want you to let that sink in. I want you to think about that for a second. Other people's limitations are boundaries for our lives. In other words, what do we tend to try to do? We try to force other people to do things when we want to, why we want to, how we want to. We expect them to do it this way because we would do this this way. We expect them to do it that way because we want it done that way. And when they don't do it the way we want it done, what happens? We get upset. We get angry. We get frustrated with them. Well, did you ever stop and think that they have limitations that prevent them from doing it the way you want it done? We have to deal with them according to their limitations. Their limitation is a boundary for me. And I need to know that, and I need to do that according, like, I'll give you an example, and I'll close with this. How many of us know somebody that if you put a gun to their head, they couldn't get somewhere on time? It just is not going to happen, no matter what. You could say there's $1 million waiting for you at 9 o'clock if you're there. 9:01, the $1 million disappear. They're never going to collect that $1 million. Never going to happen, okay? So tell me, why would you make them an usher and their responsibility is to get there at 8:30? Why would you do that? Because the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to frustrate yourself because they're never there on time, and you're going to frustrate them, and they're going to feel like, but they've got great hearts, they want to work, they want to help, they just can't get there on time. Well, why can't they get there on time? I get there on time, they should just try it. Get off your high horse. If you're 40 years old plus, chances are they're not going to get there on time until the day they die. They'll probably show up late for their own funeral. So in other words, they have a limitation. And their limitation needs to be your boundary. But if you keep trying to push them past their limitation to where you think their boundary should be, you're going to have major problems with somebody. So learn to respect somebody else's limitations. Let their limitations be a boundary for you so you maintain a good, healthy relationship with them. And the last thing I had written over here, I put down what also poisons our heart is unmet expectations. Unmet expectations are often caused by unrealistic expectations. Somebody didn't meet our expectations. Well, maybe because you had unrealistic expectations. Because you thought they should do it the way you did it. But you didn't understand what their limitation was. And so therefore you got angry with them. You go, well, I would be there for you at this time. So therefore, you just don't care. You're selfish. Well, stop. You didn't understand and respect their limitation. And you didn't use their limitation as your boundary. You jumped over their limitation. You jumped over the boundary, and you got frustrated, you got aggravated. Set reasonable expectations upon other people. And those expectations have nothing to do with how you would do the situation, how you would think of the situation. It has nothing to do with you, it has to do with who they are. You understand that? All right, God bless everybody. Sorry for holding you a little bit longer than normal. I know I had a lot to go over today. Enjoy the small groups. Don't forget this Friday night, 6:30, Harvest Night right here in the back and inside. Bring family members, bring friends, bring kids from the neighborhood. We have a lot for them to do, okay? God bless. Goodbye.